It's a Friday here in beautiful downtown Renfrew. We're recording episode 2 of Sports Storm, and we just want to give a shout out to all the people who have already subscribed to this podcast on iTunes. Also available on YouTube. I think it's probably better if you just get the audio version because we're amongst people who are have faces for radio. Now, within the next week, you're going to get bombarded with sociology-based podcasts. So if you could just ignore those for those sports fans, that would be great. What we're trying to do is upload all the lessons for the year so that people can study for exams with just directly to their phone with very good podcasts. So we're going to try to stick with a sports-themed pod called Sports Storm once a week. And, of course, next week, Brad Bennett will be joining us for our first episode of Teched Up, and he's going to provide a university guide to technology as this generation moves on. So today's topics, we're going to talk about Take It for Tom. We're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to talk about Milan Lucic. We're going to talk about the NHL NBA playoffs. We're going to talk about the Raptors. We're going to do an NFL breakdown on all the moves that have happened in the past week. And then we're going to have a little special topical segment called Stupid Moves by Athletes. And then we're just going to finish up the pod by talking about some local sports. Joined with us today, Neil Gibbons, Devin Kluche, our hockey expert, Dane Broom, and our executive producer, Bronson. Of course, everyone has a noac.ca email, so if you visit noac.ca, you can drop us an email, or if it's for the whole cast, you can email us at podcast@noac.ca. And finally, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Try Hard Apparel. Need logo designs or promotions? Contact Try Hard Apparel at live.ca. All right, so this past weekend, Calabogie. It was a Take It for Tom run. Renfrew Mercury reports over $11,000 raised for the Norton family, which I just think is fantastic. There was a little bit of a side gentleman bet here between myself and our friend Bronson, who could run the 5K fastest. Let's talk about some of the hype that developed here, and then we'll talk about the results. Neil, what was your take on the hype that was presented here?
Well, the training leading up to it was really grueling. Both were really putting everything they had into it, and saw a lot of sweat go down that day.
Okay, Devin, you were there firsthand pre-race. What was the mood? What was the tension like pre-race?
It was a warm day. There was some sweat being dripped down already, and it was pretty tense. But on a day like that, you can't help but be a little easygoing.
Fair enough, because it was for a good cause. All competition aside, it was for a good cause. Now, in the end, Bronson came up victorious, likely by 5 minutes.
Probably 10.
I don't think it was 10. We were not, that was my first race that I didn't wear a chip. So I think there's an asterisk to that. Bronson, what are your comments? What are your feelings?
Well, there's a lot of head games and mental games going on before, and I'm just happy that I pulled out triumphantly and won 4 pounds of wings. But even above the wings is the pride, and that was won and lost.
Yes, pride lost. I think we have to remember, though, that you are half my age.
You can't play the underdog.
I do play the underdog card, and I think the NHL playoffs, everyone's trying to play the underdog card, but I was trying to get in your head.
Yeah.
But I think you played head games by telling me your strategy. Your strategy was just to stick with me and then see you have a final kick at the end. So that was kind of in my head, and my training involved practicing this kick, which turned out to be virtually irrelevant, because you just started a pace that I couldn't maintain, and everything hurt. Now, I think an advantage was your pace bunnies. You had some pretty fit guys running your pace bunny. So
Yeah, it's a lot easier to run with people, I guess, and guys that are in better shape than me than myself, I suppose.
But I think you got to give yourself a lot of credit, Bronson. It hurts me to say, but you beat me fair and square. Someday I'd like a rematch. The running's not going to stop. RCI here in Renfrew is planning a bus tour to the Krista Johnson Memorial Run, June 14th. I'm in. A lot of the grads can't be in because of something called prom that day, but I'm looking forward to running for another good cause. Let's transition, because I think we've talked enough about you beating me, Bronze. Let's talk about the Penguins. Breaking news, they fired their coach and GM. They lost to the Rangers in 7 games. Devin, you're a diehard, try-hard Penguins fan. What's your take?
Something had to be done, definitely, after being up. I don't mind, like, they lost, I get that, but when I think they were up 3-1 in the series, and they collapse like that, it just rattles me. That's the worst part. So something definitely needed to change.
Dane, from a goaltending perspective, how much blame do you give to Marc-Andre Fleury?
I give lots of blame to Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't think when it comes down to it, he's a clutch performer. Just by looking at his previous performances in the World Juniors, he did win a cup, but he does have a pretty solid team in front of him. So I think they need a new goalie change.
So do you move? They're strong up the middle. They've got Crosby, they've got Malkin, they've got Sutter. Is it time to move one of those pieces for a goalie? And who is that goalie?
I think that Malkin should go for a good 30-minute defensive defenseman and a decent goalie, better than Fleury. I think there should be a compound deal with Fleury and Malkin to get the best that they could get.
Now, likely have to go out west. You're probably not going to trade within your conference. Does anybody stand out?
The Wild, they do have Harding, who just recently been injured, and Backstrom, who are 2 very solid goalies. So maybe if they can pick up defenseman from the Wild.
Are you selling Brizgalov short here?
Yeah, I don't think Brizgalov should be playing in the National Hockey League.
And Brizgalov is an absolute just clown, too. Did you ever see that 24/7 for HBO?
I have not.
It is ridiculously funny just because Brizgalov. He is a weirdo.
So do we think we need a new voice in the room? Do you need like a drill sergeant like a Tortorella? And I don't think that's the answer. I'm hearing Barry Trotz's name. I do like that. Your thoughts?
I like Bilesman. Like, he's a good coach, but yeah, they need a different approach to how they're going with their team.
My memory is losing me here. Who is the head coach? He was the head coach of the Lightning, and they did that 1-3-1 trap. He was fired, but that's something our researchers are going to have to follow up, because he's kind of gone away and nowhere to be heard from. Now, Kirk Muller was also fired, but he's been picked up by the St. Louis Blues. I think that would have been a good fit. Some people are still questioning whether Dallas Eakins is a good fit in Edmonton. I think it is. Probably the worst hair in sports, Dallas Eakins. But yeah, tough times. Let's look ahead then. We're into the Final Four. We've got Rangers or we're heading into the Final Four. We've got the Rangers, Habs. What do you see coming out of that series? Dane?
I think I have the Rangers pulling through in that series. I think Carey Price has just had way too much hockey with the Olympics. He must just be exhausted with that Game 7 just from Boston. And the Rangers, they're a very tough team. They have a lot of heart, and they're going to give 110% every night, which is why I think they overcame against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So,
well, they could be the sentimental favorites in light of what happened to St. Louis. Like, that is a good story, and of his mom passing away. That's not the good story. The good story is that they've overcome the sadness and really rallied together behind St. Louis. I was hearing yesterday on TSN Radio that the Ranger Habs series, it's not going to be like a Bruins Habs series of physicality. It's going to be more a skating series. So maybe the East is going to come out a little more fresh than the West. Special shout out to our global ambassador, Jacob Murdoch. Guy Boucher was the Lightning coach that we were thinking of, and that's just great talent there. on the research department. Email our global ambassador, Murdochs at noac.ca. Jacob will be joining us on a pod next week, and he'll be depicting the Habs series. You gotta love the atmosphere that's going to be presented in Montreal, though. It's just going to be wild, and I think that's good for hockey. I think that's good for Canada. Outside of the West, or in the West, we don't have the fourth team finalized yet. Does Anaheim, LA have a shot against Chicago? Go, Dane.
I think if Anaheim wins the series, I think they do have a shot against Chicago. Just from an offensive standpoint, they're more talented than the LA Kings. LA relies mostly on their goaltending from Jonathan Quick, and I think Chicago's offensive abilities will break through Jonathan Quick.
If it's a Kings-Hawks series, there's a lot of hatred, bad blood there already. I still think the winner of the East might be more fresh. Montreal had that extended break after the first round. I'm thinking whoever comes out there is going to be more fresh. Dev.
I think that it'll be LA. Well, LA this series, but if the Ducks do make it on,
The Ducks, yeah, that's good.
that they can't rely on Gibson, their young goalie, to take them that far. He hasn't had a lot. He's only in his 8th game in the NHL. I don't think they can rely on him that much.
Weak goal he gave up the other night, but he made up for it. I mean, can you blame a goalie when you only score one goal? I don't know. Sometimes I think that's a scapegoat. Okay, moving on. NBA playoffs. As you know, the Raptors are out, so I'm finding it much more enjoyable to watch the games now because I'm not so vested in it. It's not so stressful. I love what's happening in the West with San Antonio and the Thunder. I like those teams a lot. You got the youthful enthusiasm of KD and Russell Westbrook versus the savvy veteran presence of the Spurs. Who do you like there?
I like the Thunder a lot more than I like the Spurs. Like, I like the leadership of the Spurs, but yeah, just the Thunder are a lot more enjoyable to watch, I find. And but it's just Westbrook. I don't know. He needs to stop taking so many shots. Like, why don't you just give the ball to Durant? Like, MVP, he's ready to go. Like, Westbrook can't put up that many shots.
Yeah. You know, I've had trouble with this because I always want my point guard to be a pass-first guy. But with the athleticism that Westbrook brings, do you have to live with these kind of shots?
I don't know. I suppose so, because he's not going to stop taking them anytime soon.
What I saw the other night when the Thunder made a glorious comeback with 3 minutes to go, you wouldn't think offense would be a problem with Durant and Westbrook, but I found them really clogging up the key. It's almost like they need that third scorer and maybe put someone in the corner who can hit that corner three. That's where you kind of miss a Harden. I mean, the Lamb kid could hit it, but I don't know. I could see the Spurs making that a very frustrating series. And then, you know, my policy in the East is anyone but the Heat. I'm glad Brooklyn's gone. Indiana's struggled, but what do you see out of that series?
I think that he's going to take it. I really do. I think they'll probably go 3-peat, or they'll at least make it to the finals.
Which makes me really angry as, you know, just a fan of life. I just do not like the heat. I don't like the humidity. And Chris Bosh, it just hurts my face when I talk about Chris Bosh. We're actually going to have a Raptors postmortem podcast coming up with some special guests next week. So I love their run. I love what Jurassic Park did, and we'll talk more about that next week. Moving on to a topic that we feel quite passionate about, the NFL. Draft is over. We're seeing a lot of player movement here. Neil, who were the winners and losers of last week's draft, or of the offseason to this point?
I think it's hard to put into perspective right
Perspective.
now. Yes.
Yes, okay.
Who is the winner or loser? Like you always say, when you see steals in the draft, like people going later than they're supposed to, there's usually a reason they slid down. and you can't really say you've won until you start playing. Because in the NFL, it's all about wins and losses.
Well, you really went on a limb there.
Yeah.
What moves do you like outside of the draft? Veteran moves. Do you like the addition of your receiver that just went to Baltimore?
Steve Smith?
Steve Smith.
I do like it. I feel like they have a new veteran receiver. They lost Anquan Bolden, which I really think you saw really hurt Flacco last year. I think that's part of the reason they missed the playoffs.
And Flacco's not very good. Like, that's the other
I
thing.
feel like they give $120 million contracts to people that are pretty good.
Okay, that's interesting. He's not a Hall of Famer. He's not mobile.
Super Bowl MVP.
Okay. Who's the guy they signed, Steve?
Steve Smith.
Steve Smith. He can go 0 to hamstring injury in 2.4 seconds.
Well,
He did play well for Panthers last year. And the year before. I just know this because I've had him on my fantasy football team.
Yeah, but that's
He put
different.
up a lot of points.
With Cam Newton, he can open it up. You have to have a spy on Cam.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
true.
opens it up more for
A spy cam, if you will.
Steve Smith.
Now, rumors that Andre Johnson wants out of Texans, out of Houston.
Understandable.
Why?
Because they're just building the defense. Like, they didn't get him a quarterback. I'd be pissed too.
Ravens have proven that you win championships with defense.
No, and Seattle last year, that's right.
Yeah, that's a
Like,
better example, Bronze.
Like, I don't know how well or good of a secondary they really have. Like, they have a monster defensive line. Like, no one is saying they don't now. But, like, where else? You need offense. You really do need offense, and no one's going to pass the ball.
Now, next week we might have a better expert in here talking about Johnny Manziel. They've reported that he is going to be a backup. What do you think about that?
I feel like that's motivation for him to work. He's more than likely never sat a game in his life. And
Other than suspensions.
yes, of course. But freshman year, he won a Heisman and declared for the draft in his sophomore year, and he's really just been a superstar up until now. But the NFL is a different level, and you can't expect him to come out and perform the way he has in college on that big of a stage.
I think that there's so much hype around him that they can't. They're selling tickets because of him. They sold how many season tickets the Browns after they drafted him?
Exponentially
He's
high,
the number one selling jersey after the draft.
Yeah.
And Mike Sam's number 2.
which is a cool story as well.
Okay, cool.
There's so much hype around him. I think they're trying to take some of that off. Like, they want more publicity to the Browns, but there's going to be too much pressure on him, I think, if they put him in to start. So I think it's smart what they're doing, saying keeping him as a backup right now.
Bronson, you want to talk about the New England scouting report on Manziel that's been leaked?
Yeah, so that was super interesting. But like, it's everything, or I would expect, maybe not a fan of Manziel would expect, because like it pretty well said, lazy, work ethic, cocky. It's funny how much they're going to their family ties now too after Hernandez, and like because they said that he had outlaw bloodlines is what they said, which is weird. I don't know what his family's like, but they're just worried about the next Hernandez. But like it's everything you think. Like he's a cocky kid, and yeah, I don't know. I can't see him doing well in the NFL, especially with the Browns.
He has to be a marketing genius, though. The fact that he patented Johnny Football, he enters the NFL draft on stage, making the money.
I hated that.
That did bug me, but from a marketing standpoint, I'm assuming that's going to be his touchdown celebration. Like I think, from a marketing perspective, he's a smart dude. When they talked about announcing that he's being a backup, my mind went a couple places. One, it takes pressure off of him to be good right now, and then can he be an understudy like Tom Brady was, like Aaron Rodgers? Now, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers were understudies to, Drew Bledsoe. I don't know if he was great.
Probably good role models, better than Johnny Manziel.
Okay. So, yeah, do you need to be an understudy in the NFL to be an elite quarterback, or do you do like an RG3 or like an Andrew Luck where you're given the reins, or Cam Newton early?
I think what also it might do for him is get his head back into football. Seems like he's more focused on money and fame than anything, and that's one thing you see I know a lot of people have been talking. You see now so much emotion whenever someone gets drafted, but really all that emotion, it means nothing. Like when you're drafted, that's when you should start working harder. It's not. It is a big moment in their lives, but it's not necessarily where they should stop working. Which is why I find it kind of strange when you see Johnny Manziel. He's celebrating. He's signing deals with big name brands, and he's just. It doesn't seem like he's focused on football, and this might show him maybe you have to keep working in order to earn the starting job.
And just like I wouldn't put too much weight into the announcement that he's going to be back up because they haven't started training camp yet. Like no, they haven't seen anything. Like I don't know, and it's not like Browns have a solid quarterback anyways. Like did they go through 2 or 3 last year?
3,
Yeah, like how can they even name that? It's like
And maybe that's one of their wish lists to bring in a veteran guy. But
Yeah,
like
maybe.
you said, but are you going to bring in an elite veteran? Are they going to go to Brett Favre at 46 or 47 to come in? Now, our NFL insider, Jacob, just reported that he Manziel allegedly texted the Browns to draft him. I find that interesting, that, this high-profile guy going to Cleveland. Cleveland is starved for a winner. So it would be nice to generate some excitement around that city. Now, we're going to come back to Cleveland and talk about Josh Gordon in a second and whether or not Johnny Football will have anyone to throw to. But I want to get Devin's take on Joe Namath. And he went out of his way to name a starting quarterback. Who does he think should start?
He thinks Vic is the better player right now, so he thinks Vic is going to start. But that's coming from a different perspective, I guess. Like he didn't play the same type of game that Vic did. So, and the way Vic comes off, he comes off as saying that he is going to be the backup. He's claimed that Geno Smith will start. So, I know Joe Namath, big Broadway Joe, but I think that it'll end up being Geno when it comes to it.
I just feel Vic. Go ahead, Bronze.
It's coming from the guy who screwed up the coin toss at the NFL Super Bowl and who tried to make it with a sideline reporter when he was drunk on the field.
So recognizing the source, yeah. I don't know. I would still love to see a Wildcat offense work with Vic.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'm just intrigued by that.
That's all they would have, like their offense right now, though. They have the pound and ground. They have Chris Ivory and they have Chris Johnson, so they will have a good run offense, which will be in Vic's favor. But I still think that overall, Geno will develop more by then, and he'll be the starter.
I really think Rex Ryan is a good coach too. He has led them very well, and it went 8-8 last season. And he was they had garbage team,
Yeah, so just going back to the draft, I just wanted to point out one thing that bothered me was the devaluation of running backs. And I find it
How about undervalued? Okay, yeah.
running backs. I find it a little bit ridiculous how far they're sliding. I just want to point out, last year we saw Tavon Austin, DeAndre Hopkins, Cordero Patterson, Robert Woods, Aaron Dobson. All of them went before Eddie Lacy. And I know that Eddie Lacy wasn't the first back taken, but he was the only back that played from week 1. So if you look at the stats, you have Tavon Austin, 418 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. Hopkins, 802 yards, 2 touchdowns. Patterson, 469 yards, 4 touchdowns. Robert Woods, 587, 3 touchdowns. Like, they're not ridiculously good numbers. And then if we look at Lacy, 1,178 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns. And that's from a 61st pick.
And a great late season fantasy acquisition that took me to my league final, which I really like. Is it because of the shelf life or limited shelf life of NFL running backs?
But we look at Frank Gore, he's consistent. Adrian Peterson, we've seen
Adrian Peterson was hurt.
a lot of consistent running backs. And it's to the point now where you need a running game to win. If we look at the
I think we're in a throwing league.
you still need a running game to win. Look at what's believed to be the 2 best teams in the league. We see Seattle Seahawks with Marshawn Lynch. They ran the ball and played good defense. San Francisco 49ers with Frank Gore, they ran the ball. They played good defense. You look at all the playoffs teams, even New England, when they played Indianapolis in the divisional championship, they ran the ball with LeGarrette Blount. And this year, when you see, we saw a ridiculous amount of receivers go off the board before we had Bishop Sankey, the first running back, taken at 54th. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 receivers. And history's shown that they're not going to put up numbers that you would expect from every receiver.
Well, you make an interesting point, and maybe some people miss the boat, and I'm sure that's motivation for some of the running backs to work harder in the off season. I would like to, again, we've got a lot of previews coming up for upcoming podcasts, but an NFL power ranking, a really early power ranking, because I really feel that the Bills have been undervalued or devalued, as Givy would say. Sticking with the NFL, two stories have really come up in the media lately: Aaron Hernandez and Josh Gordon. So Josh Gordon, a very skilled receiver, I believe, for the Browns, and is the only receiver in the league to have 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, I believe. So you take him away for a season for allegedly using marijuana. Zach, can you respond to that, please?
Well, I think they need to reassess the penalties for that. Like, sure, it's illegal, and I know the NFL has to give a penalty for that.
Period. Done. Over. It's illegal. Over.
Yeah. So it's illegal. But he's not getting any criminal charges for it. Why is he banned for a year?
Okay. Interesting.
And Von Miller last year, 6 games. Even that's insane.
Okay.
Give him 1-game penalty.
It's not like he's the only guy. You can assume that
Yeah.
more than Josh Gordon does use marijuana in the NFL.
Well, that's a bold statement, Davo.
No, but coaches, I forget who said this, but they said half a training camp is so that you get these guys in hotels and train them up and keep them clean for a month before they have to pass the drug test.
Well, it's interesting, and Steve Simmons from The Sun brings up the point that if you're going to use this as a violation, 2 states right now have it decriminalized, and 20 states it's legal for doctors to prescribe it as pain medication. So is this an obsolete rule? Pain meds, if anyone needs pain meds, I'm thinking it's NFL players. But this is going to open up a big can of worms. I guess secondly, Aaron Hernandez. What a fall from grace. Likely a top 3 tight end talent-wise. Yesterday indicted on another drive-by of 2 murders. Bronze, do you want to respond?
Yeah. I think this guy, it's a public fall from grace, but this guy's clearly been at it for a long time. These murders happened in 2012, and just the way it happened was that they're in the club. He'd never met these guys before in his life. Something happened with them. There's 5 guys in the car, and they're stopped at a red stoplight, and he just comes up and starts shooting at them, and he killed 2 of them and injured another. And so, just from doing that, that's clearly not his first time doing something bad or being involved in anything. And there's tons of red flags when he was drafted. So it's a public fall from grace, but I think his past is just catching up with him.
And this incident has really influenced New England to really research the character of their, and as you saw with the reservations of not taking Johnny Manziel. An interesting pick by the Patriots was the quarterback they picked, and the name slips my mind, but yes, and now he has the opportunity to be an understudy there. So I think that's a nice situation for Garoppolo. Can you say that?
Garoppolo?
Yes, I can't say that. To be in.
I don't know about that.
Oh.
Well, I feel like Brady, you see with Manning, he's playing he's going to be around for a long time. You're going to have, we saw it with Ryan Mallett. They drafted him and had him understudy Brady. But really, if you're not getting on the field, then how is that helping you? You might develop as a player mentally, but you're not going to get the physical feeling of the NFL. And how long do you expect a second-round quarterback to stick around and sit on the bench is another thing.
What do you think? Brady has 3 years left, or do you think there's longer?
I think he has longer.
I think he has a lot of that.
You haven't seen his play drop off that much.
And like he doesn't really seem to get hit that much. Like
Yeah, he
he's
ducks a
pretty well
lot. Yeah.
protected. You're never gonna see him taking a big hit.
Shout out to our buddy Duck. Can't be with us today. He's in the weight room. When we talk about stupid moves by athletes, sometimes when I think of this, I think of people requesting trades and thinking that the grass is always greener on the other side. It hasn't worked for a lot of athletes who have left their area for better pastures. I think of Brad Richards. I think of Rick Nash. I think of Damon Stoudemire. Those are when I think of stupid moves, those are the moves that I think. What comes to mind when you think stupid moves by athletes outside of Gordon, Hernandez, or trades?
Oh, I don't know any in particular, but it's just like stuff like DUIs and everything like that. Or Irvin, is that his name?
Michael Irvin?
Indianapolis owner.
Oh, yes.
He got his DUI and then he like cocaine and Oxycontin and stuff in the truck. Like the guy that rich, why does he not have a car? And here's a shout out to Dirty Sports. Joe Prano said this. So for a guy that rich and he's having all these illegal Oxycontin and stuff, why doesn't he just get a doctor to prescribe it to him?
Well, we don't condone covering up crimes, Bronze, here on the podcast, but I think you bring up some good points. Any dumb moves hockey-wise, Dane?
I don't find there's many dumb moves hockey players make.
Do you think Lucic and his handshake post-game was a dumb move?
See, after Game 7 like that, emotions going through the entire series, someone's bound to say something. Just like the Martin Brodeur, Sean Avery handshake. It's bound to happen. When you're fighting for the next round, Game 7, emotions boil over and stuff happens. He could have done many worse things.
Well, we've all been there, right? The whistle blows, the final horn goes, and you're still pretty fired up. And maybe these things are said, but this is one of the first times we've seen it been leaked. So I don't know. Do you blame Prust? Do you blame Weiss for saying it? But you could see that there was an altercation on the ice post game. I don't know. Some people like Lucic because he doesn't have friends. He keeps it separate. It's old time hockey. I don't know. I love the tradition of the handshake, and I hope that doesn't put a black mark on that tradition.
My sources say that Lucic outside of the hockey world is probably one of the nicest guys they know. And I just find probably most hockey players who you see are your tough guys, your grinders on the ice. They are very nice outside of the hockey world, but just their love for the game, for any game, when you're an athlete playing at a high level, you're just so attached to the game and you can't stand losing. So I don't blame him for.
We got our global ambassador, number one Habs fan, Johnny Manziel fan, coming in to join the pod. What's your take on this?
Well, seeing what Dana said, same as professional wrestling. Some of the most famous WWE heels you hear of, they're the nicest guys you'll ever meet outside of the ring. Like Chris Jericho, for example. I got the chance to meet him one time, and he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
A Chris Jericho shout out. I didn't think that would happen. Great podcast, by the way. He's got some great Talk is Jericho.
Really?
A really good podcast. Brings on some good guests, better guests than we'll ever have. But let's get our Habs prediction here, Manziel. What are you thinking?
I'm taking Montreal in 5 games.
In 5 games.
I don't think that there's enough tough offense that New York can bring to the table. Price is playing way too well. Dave mentioned that he should be tired. Lundqvist has played just as many games, going to the gold medal game.
That's a good point.
He's played just as many games as Price, so I don't see why he wouldn't be as tired.
Do you agree with me that, or the pundits out there, that it'll be a skating series and not necessarily a physical series?
I think if Montreal wants to win, they're not going to make it a skating series because that's not their game.
Wow, that's incredible insight. That's incredible insight from our global ambassador, Jacob Manziel. And, of course, you can email him at Murdoch's, plural, at noac.ca. Conspicuous by his absence, of course, is the elder statesman of the podcast, Matt Murdoch, working today, but he'll be back next week. And one last thing, we're heading into the postseason of high school sports seasons, and just a little take on local sports. Dev, you want to talk about the soccer season here and what's going on?
Yeah, soccer's going, for us, it's going all right. We expected to be doing better by now. We're at 3-1-1, or 3-1-2. And the games that we tied and we lost, we think we had a good chance in. So going into counties next Thursday, we think that we still have a good chance to take it home.
Now, I heard that there's a bit of a problem with players tripping their own players on the team. Is that going to be an issue in the upcoming games?
I think we've overcome that. We've overcome that adversity, Bronze, and I think we'll come back stronger than ever from.
See, with today's media, these things just get overhyped. There is always going to be some chirps within any given team, and I think that these instances are just blown out of proportion.
Especially when you have superstars on the team.
Yes.
And more attention.
Yes. Well, Dane, you want to talk about track?
Yeah, we just had our county championship on Wednesday, and as a team, we did pretty successful. I feel that this year we've had lots of rookies coming out on the team, so I feel that the track club will be successful in 3 or 4 years because as we're introducing these new events to athletes, that they're going to thrive in a couple years because now they get their good base of the event. So
that's incredible insight as always. I just want to give a shout out to two people. One, Cooper Brown. As we speak, he's about to tee off in the D1 National Junior College Tournament. In the final round, he's 2 shots back of the leader, so he's teeing off in the second last group. Top 10, I believe, is All-American, which I believe is his goal going in. So this is putting Cooper's name on the map on the golf scene down south. This is in Burlington, Iowa. His team, Wallace State, is 3 shots back, so I'll be following that closely. Also, shout out to Jacob Collins, drafted 99th overall in the OHL draft, attended a little mini camp for Plymouth. I think Jacob has a lot of the tools necessary to succeed. And that's essentially going to wrap up episode 2 of Sports Storm. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, and of course to support our title sponsor, Try Hard Apparel. Email them at tryhardapparel@live.ca. That's it for this week. Take care.